and what it is for a very special presentation on YouTube on the LTV Crypto channel with Ryan, the Last American Vagabond. You know what I was thinking? Oh, hold on. Let me see if I can introduce you properly. Host of the Daily Wrap Up on YouTube still.
I mean, yes, technically, I can explain that if you want, but it's a little weird today.
Publisher
They
of
gave back my main channel, which is really strange, but they
right.
deleted like half the content. It's really weird.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about that. Okay, so you actually exist on YouTube as the Last American Vagabond. You have publisher of a website, the Last American Vagabond, which among other things publishes Whitney Webb and Derek Bros. Do you also publish his stuff?
Yep.
Too?
Yeah. Well, they're staff writers for TLAV. Whitney, Derek, Robert Inlakesh, and now I've got Taylor Hudak also doing interviews and more coming soon as well. But doing great work actually.
Cool, and that all goes on at thelastamericvanvagabond.com.
Correct. And
Cool.
yeah, all of it goes there. And then, stuff still goes like interviews will on any of the video platforms and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So, and then you're on BitChute, you're on DLive. We're going to talk about censorship. We'll talk a little bit about cryptocurrency too, since this is a crypto channel. And we've been talking about cryptocurrency, you and I actually.
Oh yeah.
Since way before it was cool.
Back in the Steam It days.
Steam It.
Even though it's still around. They're in the heyday.
Making a few posts on Steam It and turning that into Chainlink, what turned into a lot of money somewhere down the road. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
which
into
literally I've made the point before, and despite people's and somewhat rightly so having suspicions about all of it, TLAB wouldn't exist without that. There was a moment there, and just because it was whatever I had at my disposal, but I happened to have a little bit of currency and a couple different things that if I didn't have, I literally would have gotten another job and I probably wouldn't be here right now. It's an interesting point to make, especially for that kind of like, it's all bad or it's all good kind of conversation. There's some nuance in there for sure.
Yeah. Well, I will say that cryptocurrency is everything that I do now. So, I started doing cryptocurrency consulting because it turns out that there are people trying to get into crypto, need help with it stuff, and I actually know what I'm doing from having done it for a long time. So I'm doing that, and then decided to do the channel about crypto too, because you're supposed to be able to talk about it on YouTube,
Right. It's interesting because it's almost like because there's so many there's a couple really big focal points right now that they're censoring everywhere that it's like there's other discussions in the past that used to be like much more controlled that are like not being focused on. You know what I mean? Like I've even noticed that in foreign policy. There's things that I used to be attacked for that I put out even on clips that just kind of go under the radar. It's interesting.
Right. And now everybody's talking about a few things that you wouldn't have heard about before. And you're starting to get, some pushback on Israel for one thing. And also you're getting people talking about the lab, the virus, like stuff that you actually supposedly would get censored for if you were talking about before.
Or we did though, right?
Or
we did get censored for it. For the exact same conversation with the same facts before the media before they debated it in Congress between Fauci and Rand Paul. It's like it's crazy to think about that, and I'm not even a deviation from it. Like literally the documented information about the lab, about North Carolina and EcoHealth Alliance. It's like, and we were censored for fake news. Clearly, it's not fake news.
Yeah,
it's
ridiculous. Right. Did you actually get censored for that? Oh yeah, for covering that story?
No, I had focal videos just about biowarfare censored. Right, that were medical misinformation, or at that time they were weirdly calling it like what was it? They impersonation or something. Like who knows what's going on? But they directly censored exactly those topics, and not just me though. I know other people that did exactly the same, and it's just kind of silly. But I would note that I think that just because it's coming back up, I'm still not sold on any of that. I mean, I think it's real and valid to discuss the U.S. government's involvement in all these horrific things that shouldn't be happening, gain of function research and on, making bioweapons. But Does that mean that this was a bioweapon? Does that mean that they can even make bioweapons? Like, these are conversations we should have, but that's important information regardless, right? I'm just still on the fence about, I can prove to you. Sorry to go into see here, go into it, but I can prove to you that there is an illusion happening here to a degree. Like, we can debate on how big of an illusion, but it's a fact. The PCR cycle threshold, that's a fact. I mean, they've admitted it themselves. So it's like, that this is overblown to a degree. So it's like, is it just a small thing that's not that dangerous? And why would that then be a bioweapon? Or is it something that's like not really there at all? If they've used the flu to make it look like these are valid questions. And I'm not saying I necessarily feel one way or the other, but it's incredible with all the evidence on the table today that we can't ask these questions. Like, going back to the bioweapon, same point. Look at what we did. We pointed it out 8 months ago, and now it's coming out. It's like people that question all of this should think about stuff like that.
Well, the lab story is a weird story because, it's not a weird story because I was covering COVID from the very beginning, and I covered the lab from like maybe January. I said, there's this lab, and it looks, and then some doctors were coming out. They were saying it looks like the spike protein was added on, and for some reason,
I just covered that too. The HIV kind of thing.
Yeah, the HIV thing, and so that stuff was all down. It all existed, except you could get censored for saying it.
Right.
And right. and then I guess what happened with this story, from what I gather, is some person deemed reliable wrote a long piece about it. Somebody from the New York Times or something.
Oh, you mean recently?
Yeah, apparently. Right?
Yeah, it was a combination of kind of like the back and forth. And I don't know what the impetus was. I didn't track down where it could have been the article led to Rand Paul bringing it up or vice versa. But it all kind of happened around the same little time frame. You're right.
Right. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking around and like The Hill Rising is talking about it. Jimmy Dore is talking about it.
Right, exactly. That one frustrates me more than anything. It's like, oh, now Jimmy, now you're allowed to talk about it. Go ahead and dive into it, even though we've been screaming at you to cover this forever.
And you know what? He admitted that he didn't talk about it because he wasn't allowed to. He actually said that on his show. He said, I would have told you guys about this before, but I wasn't allowed to. So now that somebody else talked about it, I can talk about it, right?
Look, Jimmy Dore does a good job in getting certain things into the public view. But if at the end of the day, that if you can admit, and him or anybody, that you're letting the power behind you dictate what you're allowed to talk about, why would anybody? That means they can influence too, right? I mean, I just that's crazy. Like, if you enjoy it, laugh at it, maybe take some information, but always any show like that, walk away going, maybe that's not completely accurate. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of that going on out there, and it frustrates me.
Yeah, I mean, if he knew about it, and this is like, it's really important shit. Like, if the virus is real and really killed a bunch of people, which I actually believe, controversially. Then it matters if it was made in a lab, and it was funded by the United States. And so even if Jimmy wasn't allowed to talk about it on YouTube, well, he could have it's important enough that maybe he should have mentioned it on Twitter or something, or gotten
he was afraid to be called a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
I mean, it's not, you can see that. It's all written all over what all these people do. All these, there's a lot of these progressives out there that were like classically like anti-establishment. They're all lying about everything. And then health comes out and they're like, ooh, trust them, everything they say because danger. It's like, wait, these are the same people you just said lie about everything in regard to foreign policy, but we trust them because danger, COVID. It's just like, they know that health has this effect. Studies have been done on it. The parasite stress theory, they know that feeling like you're at risk from some pandemic is going to drive you into acquiescence. It's going to make you trust the government. And they've done studies on this, right? That's why I think they abuse this, It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, now we're in a brand new world where we don't have to wear masks anymore. I was just telling you on CNN. What was it? What was I looking
USA
at?
Today.
USA Today money section is mentioning that masks are still required at most stores, but then there are 3 articles from all the stores that immediately dropped their mask requirement. Walmart, Sam's Club, Trader Joe's, Costco, all dropped their mask requirement immediately.
Just think about that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and most importantly, at least I checked the Trader Joe's article, they will not be demanding proof of vaccination.
Yeah.
So,
See, that seems to suggest that they want what I was talking about on my show today. Like in Nashville downtown right now, which was very strict before this, shoulder to shoulder. The entire strip. No one's wearing masks. So it's on a dime this switches over. That's very interesting. Like that seems coordinated. Like they wanted to create a situation where we were ready to break out of this, and they just, talking about the things that are very contentious right now, the self-spreading concept, the self-amplifying mRNA vaccine discussion. Like there's things they're testing right now. They're designed to spread. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just kind of or the discussions of the idea of people catching things next to other people. Like I know personally 2 people that are in menopause that got their period again because they're around somebody who was vaccinated. Somebody I know personally who had a husband that got vaccinated, and she started her period again after 4 years of being on menopause.
So you know somebody personally, because I had heard these stories, and I was like, wow, that's amazing if that's true, because it has implications about fertility, obviously.
Totally. I mean, there's reports on VAERS. Of course, we can all admit that those are not completely verified, which is why they keep the system that way. Remember, they tried to do a new system with the HHS, and the CDC just dropped it and ran the moment that they wanted to make it automated and more informative. It's just very telling. That way they can go, it's all undefined. Right. Well, we don't know for sure, and then never just leave it there, Right. It's in there. You can find reports of people like women breastfeeding.
Right.
That transmits to the baby, or even just being around, right? Having a child that dies after somebody being around back. Like, sure, it could be coincidence, but when you have this many reports, especially knowing that system is only 1%, give or take, of the total, that's coming directly from HHS and Harvard. Like, that's crazy, And so the possibility of that is important thing to consider. Do we know for sure? No. But going back to your point about removing this thing, it's like everyone just rushed back into it. And what's interesting is the big stores said, no, we're good, right? So the question we should be asking is, what changed? That's great. I'm happy about it because it's wrong, it's illegal, and in fact, it actually makes you more sick based on the science that I've went over 100 times. And this is easy to show. Random controlled trials from the British Medical Journal that state very clearly cloth masks dramatically increase your risk of infection. The only random controlled trial done on cloth masks. You heard that discussed in the mainstream media, right? The point is that what has changed? Have these people suddenly learned that the science was wrong? And if so, they need to tell us that. Or is something different now that makes us no longer at risk? And also, they should tell us that, right? Nothing has changed. They haven't reached herd immunity like they keep claiming. They keep claiming we should be reaching.
Right.
The whole point was reach herd immunity, we can go back to normal, right? We didn't do that.
Right.
There's not even by their statements. We've only fully vaccinated almost, I think, a little over a third of Americans.
Yeah, I think it's like 35%, and the goal is supposedly 70% from what I heard.
Yeah, not even close. So and so why are we allowing people to go back to this? There's no real logic, which needs to show you that it was never really about logic.
Right. Well, it certainly reveals that it was all ridiculous to begin with, if it was so easy that we could just say it's over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like that.
But what I noticed changing was that some liberals or like the New York Times, for example, came out and wrote an article that said, hey, the CDC is bullshitting you about how many people catch COVID outside. Right? Because they were still saying that outside you still have to wear a mask, and also kids at recess and all this crap, right? Yeah. So the New York Times actually came out and they said, the CDC says what the CDC said was less than 10% of transmission happens outdoors. And New York Times was like, okay, well, maybe that's true, but it's really more like 1% or maybe 0.1%, as in like, there are no documented cases of anyone catching COVID from walking past somebody or being...
Which is the science, which is true. Which is funny because that makes me agree with New York Times. Which seems to suggest to me what we're saying. If they're leaning into that, the goal, the direction is no more masks, justify it, to drive whatever's going to happen. It's very strange.
Yeah, I mean, what I noticed changing was that people on the left, like Trevor Noah, also came out, and he was like, hey, what's the deal? I got vaccinated. I don't want to wear my mask anymore. And I feel like it was maybe that people who got the vax are like, okay, I got the vax, now I just want to go back to normal, and somehow maybe the pressure of that actually got to the, politics.
Maybe.
And I
Yeah.
mean, I
Well,
don't
but so
know.
think about again that to that very point. That in and of itself reveals how arbitrary this is.
Right.
Right? If you just I don't want to. Okay, well let them take it off. It's like
Right.
they clear. I showed again today on the FDA document and many others. They're clear about the fact that this only reduces symptoms. It may not prevent everybody.
Yes,
The
right.
transmission is clearly still happening, and you can still catch it. So
Right.
there's no logic to this at all.
Right, right. Because you can still get it and transmit it, at least as far as they know, possibly.
Right.
It could be that it reduces transmission, but
No, I would argue that. Look, if first of all, as always, if what they're saying is accurate, which
Right.
I don't know why we would trust these like Pfizer, who has a laundry list of track records of lying about exactly things like this.
Right.
Right. They're called a habitual offender by multiple articles. Like this is crazy. But I just what was it? Oh, I just lost my train of thought. What were you just saying?
we were talking about you were talking about
Vaccine.
the vaccine and people catching it and transmitting it. We were talking about
Right.
that, and then you were
Right.
saying that Pfizer's, that it happens, or I think that's where you're probably going with it.
Shoot, I don't know
I
how I
didn't
lost
catch
that
you
just now. So much flying around. But in any case, Pfizer as a company, since that's where I left off right there, is known to lie about stuff like this. Oh, that's
Yeah.
what it was. Just about the fact that they're saying that it's effective or it works. And the point is that that's only against symptoms.
Right.
So that was my point. That if we're going to say it has potential to reduce transmission, I could say that is possibly accurate if what they're saying is true, because you
Right.
could argue that if it does lessen symptoms, which by the way, I don't see any real world evidence that it actually does. Plenty of scientists, high ranking ones, are saying that too. That you could argue that lessening of symptoms would reduce the possibility of transmission. But
Right.
based on their argument that this is the most deadly thing we've ever seen in a century, why would you then argue, well, okay, we'll risk a little bit of transmission?
Right,
Like,
right.
It just still doesn't make any sense. You know,
Right.
it's just stupid.
Right. Well, it's amazing how quickly things change. And, as far as people, because it was just weeks ago, I think Fauci was talking about wearing masks until the end of
2 of them.
this year, right? I mean, it was,
Right. Yeah, he said, well, here's the thing, and I still think this is happening or will happen. He's saying that they may be seasonal. Right. And this is what everyone's talking about. Oh, the booster shot in 6 months. Oh, the next pandemic. Like they're all laying the table, setting the table for whatever's going to flip around next. Or maybe it's for climate change. We've already seen them link the idea about, well, now we're making smart masks that can gauge your CO2 for climate change. It's literally say, oh, so we have this seamless transition from masks into climate change. So what happens if something happens and all of a sudden we're like, oh no, our CO2 emissions are through the roof, and then with masks, lockdowns, because climate it worked for lockdown, right? We've already seen them lay this groundwork. The World Economic Forum has been trying constantly. Look at lockdowns helped us so much. Let's use them for climate change. Like they're just naming it outright. So whether it's that or it's some kind of new, what Bill Gates called pandemic 2, seemingly he knew that was coming. I think that's just going to flip right back into, even though the science has been clear, even though now they showed you that they can just flip it off based on no new science, it'll come back. And all the people that believe in this as gospel, because that's what it is. This is dogma. They are just blindly trusting authority. Will jump right back on.
mm-hmm. Well, I guess we'll see where that goes, but you're right about a new narrative. We have to have something, and climate change definitely is one of them. And actually, we can talk about cryptocurrency and do a segue. Mm-hmm. Is that what do you think of Elon Musk? See, he's coming out now, and he decided that he wanted to make the price of Bitcoin go down. And
was that what is that what he openly stated he was trying to do, or is that the
no,
impression?
no, but I mean, obviously,
like
obviously that was what was going to happen. So it's just one of those weird things. He gets to tweet and move the price of these markets. But
it shows you how easy that can happen too.
Yeah, well, what? So do you? So you have Chainlink. What did you do with it? You keep it, all of it, and you just sell it as you go?
Yeah, well, no, I'm an investor. Like the two things is either a trader or an investor in regard to any kind of financial stuff. And it's like, to be a trader, especially with cryptocurrency, I argue it's even crazier than the stock market.
Yes.
That you need to basically be paying attention all the time. You know, you get these swings, and if it goes down, you can buy more. And then, you know, the thing is like people are always saying like, why don't you sell it? It's really high. It's because I'll go do something for 20 minutes and come back and be like, shoot, you know, I'll sell it up high with the plan to buy low, and it'll go the other way or whatever.
Right,
You know how
right,
it goes.
right.
And I made mistakes like that in the past where I'm like, oh, look, I'm going to try to sell it now and then buy back in when it works. And I just miss the mark and I lose 20 grand or whatever it is. You know, it's like, you know, on paper anyway. And it's just kind of like, it's something where you realize that if you simply invest in things that you believe in, you know, and you just kind of let it ride. And, you know, obviously if there's something happens and it's catastrophic, you can decide whether you want to pull it. But historically, looking at like even Bitcoin, for example, it's really frustrating how constantly they try to frame it. Like I just saw some mainstream guy, Elon Musk obliterates Bitcoin. I'm like, can we have some perspective here?
Right.
It was at 15,000 like 3 months ago.
Right.
It's like, guys, it's way above where it was. So if you're anywhere outside that or 3 month window, you're still looking way up.
Right.
Even though it really did go down, you know, from like 50 something down to like 40 something. And it's like, yeah, that's a big drop. But it's same with the stock market. It's about perspective. And if you're a trader, that's just an opportunity. Right. You know what I mean? Unless it goes like down to like half where it was before. And they all know this. So these people, I think, are trying to play this in there, you know? But I think for me, I just did the same thing I always do. I just said, oh, it went down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe in that moment, if I have some fluid something, I'll buy a little bit of Chainlink or whatever.
Well, I tell you what, I tell you what,
done.
it really is interesting, the thing about the energy usage with Bitcoin. So, I do think it has implications on the way you invest. And I'm the same. Yeah, I don't mess around with trading, that's for sure. And it seems like
especially since they can manipulate it so easy with a lot of money, and you know, same kind of thing with the stock market. You just got to be careful.
Yeah, right. And it seems like, you know, you'd make more buying and holding the right stuff. It seems like it to me. Over time, you know, it's maybe it's not as exciting. Doesn't that seem to suggest
that it's solid?
Yeah, what do you mean, cryptocurrency?
Yeah, well, like for instance, like Bitcoin is the same kind of idea. But for me, I don't really get involved with Bitcoin or any of these. It's important. Same with anything we do. Vote with your dollar. I get involved with things that I believe in. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know how I feel about Bitcoin and the whole like future. And I know that there's larger ones like XRP, by the way, that you know, Fedcoin is my opinion, that are ones they're trying to use to kind of shoehorn the old system into this. And that's not, if you believe in this as like a way to fight back against the establishment, which I know is being debated right now, that is, you know, you want to go away from ones like that. You want to go to the privacy ones, the decentralized concepts, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I think that you know, the Bitcoin idea is that you see these, it's just so fluid and constant. You want to get your money in when you can and just kind of sit and watch it go up and continue to go up. And my point was that it seems like that almost implies how stable it is. Like, I know they keep pointing at it and going, look at how unstable it is, but look at the long term. Right. You know, I mean, my point was simply this: if it gets attacked, like let's say Elon Musk pulls one of his moves, if it's a stock, sometimes you can see that collapse.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it just disappeared. You know how many times they've tried to manipulate? It's a bubble, it's this, it's that, and no matter what they throw at it, it still comes back up.
Yeah.
You know, and that doesn't mean that it's going to go forever, but it just seems to suggest a lot more solidity than they keep trying to throw at it. You know, and that goes for a lot of them. Look at, Chainlink. I know you want to get into. I mean, damn, man, that's like the only one that I see, at least maybe because I'm not paying attention to all the altcoins out there, but that seems to kind of consistently go up against the decrease of Bitcoin, which is an important point.
Yeah,
you know, because so many of these things are tethered to it.
Yeah. Well, Bitcoin, you know, as far as this whole energy thing goes, it does use a lot of energy. I get the argument.
What do you mean by that exactly? Like, you talking about like real world energy in regard to how? Go ahead.
The mining and stuff, right? I mean, this is what Elon Musk complained about. So, and
he made reasonable points, by the way, in that discussion. He did make some reasonable points in what he was saying, but
yeah, I mean, the argument from people, from Bitcoiners, is that, well, first of all, they say 75% of the energy used is from renewable energy. A lot of that energy, a lot of those energy sources were built specifically to mine Bitcoin. I mean, people are literally putting up fields of solar panels just to mine Bitcoin. So it's kind of like energy that maybe would never have existed otherwise, you know, otherwise.
And they're creating that energy themselves.
And they're creating it. And in some cases, actually, like this guy in South Africa, is mostly setting it up to mine Bitcoin, but then it also feeds the local, it also feeds, local town. So,
That's cool.
Cool. There are a lot of really cool benefits for it, but there are coins that don't use as much power. And so stuff like today, Cardano and Polygon, I don't know if you have any Matic yet. I mean, some of those that are proof of stake are really taking off now. So
yeah. Well, to your point though, like to hear, and by the way, I'm pretty much in line with you about Elon Musk. I think that guy's the snake oil salesman. To be really honest, I don't trust anything he has to say. But in the way hearing you explain that, because obviously that's not something that I'm like a crazy. I don't really invest in Bitcoin, so it's not something that I'm like super paying attention to.
Right.
But if what you explained is the predominant energy source, I mean, I don't see how you could argue that is a drain at all. In fact.
Well,
it sounds renewable if that's the full picture. It's interesting.
I mean, it basically is it turns energy into money in a way that nothing else does. So it basically anywhere in the world you can make energy. So they're trying to find wasted energy and all this stuff. So, but in the end, it still uses a lot of power. So, and there are some other, and Ethereum is going to proof of stake. Which is instead of proof of work, which apparently uses a lot less power, and so Ethereum is play too.
The problem here, though, is like you could see like Bitcoin. Let me ask you this: what would, in your opinion, would you look at Bitcoin as something that is centralized?
No, Bitcoin is decentralized. They say it's the most decentralized, but I don't know if that's true or not. But yes.
Well, it's interesting conversation, right? Because theoretically, based on like the normal discussion, but yes, I would agree with you. But there's all these things. I wrote about this a long time ago, and I think we talked about this. The idea of how Bitcoin is sort of like the way that the mining and everything, like it's in a way sort of controlled.
Right.
And it's interesting, and you wonder if there's a level of manipulation there that we don't see, or it's interesting. And I think the point in saying that is that there are valid concerns about where this goes, and sort of like the point I make about the internet is it just we could have gone the other way. I mean, we could have lost control, and the internet could have been our enslavement, and maybe that's still the future. It's like, who knows? And so it's like people are concerned about where that goes, and even thinking about that point about the city, the infrastructure, maybe building it out with Bitcoin and how that works, and then you're reliant on the mining of that for your energy, right? That sounds a lot like what we see from this like cryptocurrency patent for mining out of your body. Remember, you've seen that? And so. Well, there's a patent for technology that allows you to mine cryptocurrency with your body. Right. And it speaks to the whole Internet of Things, Internet of the Body, like this really crazy stuff. So it's just important for the counterbalance for those watching the show that there's a lot of things that I acknowledge are a concern. That's why it's my mindset is that there are ways that some of these things can be used to push back against that, the same way we use the internet to fight back. The analogy I continue to use is that a hammer can be used to build a house, can also be used to beat your head in, right? So there's you could use these things. Now maybe I'm wrong. I'm open to that, right? But I think there needs to be conversation about this and nuance. There's like this line being drawn about how if you're still using anything like technological in this way, you're part of the problem and you're a shill. And it's like it feels a lot like that whole like you're a shill if you say any of these things like we used to deal with back in and it's like that, but. I don't know. It's an interesting conversation, Sorry to deviate into that, but I just think that's an important point there. That there are dangers here too,
People have all kinds of theories about, Bitcoin and whether it really is going to be the future or whether people are going to start using privacy coins,
That's technology, right? Yeah. That's what it's about. It's about the whether blockchain or like, for instance, like holochain is like, they're the thing that's saying like, we're thinking after blockchain. They're using if you remember holochain, right? The decentralized internet idea. That's also one that I love. I mean, I doubt it'll ever go anywhere because I think they'll never allow it to happen. But man, if you want to believe in something, it seems even though those guys are a little bit too like willing to like work with the system, it's because they just believe in what they're doing. I don't think they recognize the threat necessarily, but it's interesting, and you can see that they're like, we're not using blockchain, we're using like this net. It's interesting. But that's the point, is we can evolve and move past that. We got to find ways that this can be applied where it's not some kind of trap door where it can be usurped and used against you. It's like, I think that's out there. I believe that can be used with some of these technologies.
Yeah, I think so too. And you really can invest in things you believe in. A lot of people, actually, a lot of the consultancies I do happen to be because Jeff Berwick started talking about Pirate Chain.
Yeah, what do you know? Oh,
right?
sorry. Let's talk about that when you're done. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, sure. And it's really hard to get for a normal person. So, so I kind of walk people through it and stuff and just kind of tell them, hey, it's kind of at your own risk, but I realize it allowed a lot of people who are really anti-establishment and really kind of, don't trust the government, don't trust institutions. It
Right.
allowed them to invest in something that they could really believe in, which is,
Right.
this, ideally, I mean, Pirate Chain could be perfect money. I mean, because it's private and really fungibility is important and it makes it more fungible. And so it's better money than Bitcoin and it has really cheap fees and, it totally works and stuff. And your money is totally anonymous and so, it allowed people who believe that way, and they get excited about it, and it might be a freaking great investment too. So,
Yeah. Well, now aren't there other coins that are considered like privacy coins? Like you probably know better. Like what would you say is the closest one to that one?
well, so Monero is the other big one. Monero's like a $7 billion market cap, but apparently it's not totally private. Like there's some way, right?
Yeah.
Like anything, right? So they figured out that it's not 100% private. So this Pirate Chain is more private than that. So, I have both. I have more. I decided, I could go with the Pirate Chain narrative, and most important thing to me is is when you're talking about using it as money, is that it's fast, it's
Right.
cheap, and then if you can, then it would be great if it was private. And generally speaking, Pirate Chain is fast. It's really cheap to send, and supposedly private. So that works. I can understand investing it. It's something where you can understand the thesis, right? It's
Totally,
like,
totally. I mean, and this is the whole premise for people like us talking about it from an anti-establishment sense. Like we're talking about ways to not pull yourself into this great reset mentality. It's about literally going the other direction, about finding ways to circumvent the system, And what's interesting though is that to your point about that's one of the biggest restrictions to this. Even the normal parts of this, like people don't even realize you can get Bitcoin at 7-Eleven. They have
right.
kiosks now at 7-Eleven.
Yep.
It's very normalized and ubiquitous, but
Right.
it's even that normal process. People are like, oh, it's too complicated. And that's just because of the perception. You have to realize that the key, it's like a routing number. It's the same
Right.
thing. You just
Right.
either have the number,
Or an email address. You can, it's like an email address. Basically,
exactly. And
right?
now it's as simplified as literally just entering it in and pressing it. And like they used to be other things, and even the memo, people are like, "What's that?" It's pretty simplified. But the problem with things like Pirate Chain, not problem, but limitations, is that I looked at that the other day, and you're like, the normal person would be like, "Whoa, I have to like download this thing, and then I have to," it's like there's so much going on there, and that makes it harder. And of course, because your government is dragging their feet and normalizing this in any meaningful way in the establishment, that people just don't understand it. Meanwhile, your government's back there gobbling everything up and trying to get their position. It's like, that's what's so funny. Half these people that have been screaming Bitcoin is a bubble or fake. Now, I forget which one it was. One of these bankers was like, oh, well, now we're buying some.
Yeah.
This whole time they've been screaming it's so fake and you're all going to Jamie Dimon or whatever. I forget what one it was. And it's just so classic to see them, oh, well, now they're investing in Bitcoin. It's like, what a bunch of hacks. They just want I think they just try to get their position. That's, you almost can't even fault them because that's what these snakes do in the financial industry,
Yeah, I mean, considering the way they can move markets and stuff, that's why I think like with Elon Musk, if he doesn't own Dogecoin or if he doesn't buy Dogecoin when he's making comments about it and stuff, then he's got to be stupid because, and same with these money managers is they know that when they talk about stuff that it's able to move the markets.
Oh, yeah.
And
I find it to be very, very organized. Like if you actually pay attention, as we tend to do, you'll see them state things and you'll see it happen and grow. And I mean, the whole Wall Street bets thing was such an obvious example of how manipulated everything is and can be,
Right.
But another note that's funny to that difficulty part, you use Pocket Chain or Pocket
Pirate
Net, I think. It's a platform. It's Pocket.
No, I don't use it.
PocketNet.app. It's actually a great site. It's great. I didn't even realize it's one of these. There's so many of these now today where it's a good return. You know what I mean? Like Rockfin's another one that's got a really solid return. With a specific cryptocurrency. But the Pocket Net, I just looked at it. Whatever I just said, it's like PocketNet.app, I think. It's one that gives you pocket chain is what it's called, or P coin, I think. And I hadn't even looked at it. You know, these are a lot of these sites are a dime a dozen. They never really amount to much, or they just disappear and you lose all of what you had in there. You know, it's like they just come and go. And I looked at this the other day and I was like, oh my god, look, it's gone up to like $5 a coin, like that. It was like cents. Right. I jump over there and look, and I had like thousands of dollars sitting in there.
Really?
I'm like, oh my god, that's crazy. And so the point was, I was like, okay, so what do I do? Like, I've never where I had to find the exchange, right? Look up where they do it, and you're like, okay, well, I've never heard of that before. Jump over, you have to start up a new thing with the exchange, and they have to go through. It's a process, you know. So I get why people are resistant to these things, but all said and done, it took me, you know, a little bit of time. They had to transfer that into Ethereum, then transfer that to some other where you can trade that for dollars, blah blah blah. But sure enough, real money in my account. You know what I mean? You're going like, wow, that is literally just for posting my content there. No engagement or anything.
Really?
You know, and it just goes to show that it's over time. It's over probably a long period of time. But it just goes to show that there is value to this, you know, and it doesn't mean you have to be bound by it. You know, just the point I made earlier, you know, it's the fact that this stuff can be used in ways that seem to protect and drive work like ours, whether that means that it's still a means to an end to control us. It still currently is helping promote or push or increase our reach, you know, and that can't be seen as a bad thing if you think what we're doing is the right thing, fighting for truth and exposing the lies, you know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, right. It's a way out, you know, I think.
Hey, wait a minute. That's my thing behind you, right? I sent that to you.
Yeah.
Nice.
People ask me.
Nice.
People ask me about my cat, my glowing.
Sorry to interrupt you.
My glowing 3D cat. I'm showing it on my screen now. Yeah.
Nice.
Sometimes people ask me about it frantically. Like they're like, "Where can I get one of those?" And I say, "Oh, I got it as a gift. I think you could look up like glowing 3D cat or something and probably find it."
Where I got it. I was looking specifically for Siamese stuff. That's what I found. That's when it popped up.
That's cool. Yeah, yeah. Because so anyway, yeah, that's cool. That is from Brian, Last American Vagabond. I was thinking, and so there's some more things to say about cryptocurrency, but I was thinking to myself, we're really two kind of veteran. I feel like we're kind of like veterans. You know, we've kind of been through kind of a war together.
Oh yeah.
You ever get that feeling? I'm like, God.
I actually just brought your thing up the other day. Like that scares me still. Like about how you had that person that like got close to you and like worked your way into your life, and it turned out the whole thing was just, I mean, that's crazy. Like people often talk about like the targeted individual stuff, and like that's a real world example. Whether it was just one crazy person that wanted to mess with you or not, for those that don't know, like, do you mind if I'm not going to tell the story, but just that cool. She worked her way into his life and then like got close and then like sabotaged and manipulated stuff over a long period of time. Right. Like that's just so crazy to me. People willing to do stuff if they, especially today, think about the political, people are wild today about that guy's going to ruin the world, and like it just scares me. You know what
I think is coming next, and I have a real. It's one of those things where I have a real life gang stalking story with genuine participants who are willing to go on the record and who have gone on the record and said they're the article and said they're sorry about doing it and stuff. So like it's a real thing, and that was because. That had to do with covering, I think, satanic ritual stuff. You know?
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No. But what was I going to say? I was. It had to do with. Going through YouTube and live streaming and then all the censorship.
We're veterans of it. You were saying.
Yeah, and then all the censorship and everything on top of that. You know, and you've been everywhere, and I've been everywhere, and you're back on YouTube. Kind of, and we're just trying to figure out how to make it all work, pretty much, right? And then the new thing. So tell me this, actually, just because I'm really interested, because you reminded me of Rockfin, and I'm going to be on Rockfin. I think the guy's just not getting back to me for some reason, but they talked to me about it. Whitney Webb is on there too, so I'm curious. In case this is a story, how do you meet? Like, how do you hook up with Whitney? What a great deal for both you guys.
Well, she wrote for Mint Press News,
right?
And I was just a fan of her work, fan of a lot of the stuff being written there. And at the time, I was, and at that I was, COVID wasn't around. I was focused on mostly foreign policy at the moment, and Yemen was, has always been a focal point for me. and she had been writing a lot of good content about Yemen. At this point, she had never even done she was just a faceless writer. Well, I shouldn't say that, but she was a writer behind Mint Press News. And, I think a lot of editors out there, like the way I like to be an editor, I tell all of them, Derek, any of them, I say, I want your vision to be what's shown, not what you write and I make it into, right? That's what most editors do, and edit and change things. Like I'll edit things if I think it's necessary. I'll tweak things, or I'll add, mostly just grammatical things and change, punctuation. Mm-hmm. But I wanted them to have, their vision and write what they want, and not just, me going, oh, write about this. Like, I don't even drive them. I say, I want you to pick out what you think works. Anyway, so the point was, at that time, she was writing behind Mint Press News. She hadn't done any interviews or anything like that. And I reached out to her personally. And I said, hey, I would love to talk to you about this article you wrote. And she was all kind of like, oh, I'd never done interviews before, and, brought her on. And it was great. I mean, I loved talking to her, and very passionate, very informative, and then since then, we just kept a connection. We kept talking and, going back and forth on things. And there came a time where she was considering leaving, and we'd always just kept connection. And I said, well, shoot, I'd love to, you want to come work over here? I'd happily do that, That was one of the first ones that I think I brought over from anywhere. I was like, it was just me at that time, because I had some people way back when, but then they left and other things. Funny enough, one of the guys that I worked with, Tim Bryant, from a long time ago, you can go look at some of these things he wrote about cryptocurrency, like in way before anybody else, mid 2000s, like writing about Ethereum as the, way back then. And that guy made a bunch, like at Bitcoin, because he bought into it back before it was a thing. Right. He lives in wherever with his wife now. He's a good guy.
Right.
And funny enough, he was the one that was like, Ryan, you got to buy Bitcoin. And I was like, oh, I don't even know. Right. I would be swinging sitting pretty right now if I'd listened to him. Right. So then after that, I think kind of just grew, and, I just reached out to Derek, because Derek does amazing work. He's been running actually I'm wearing a shirt right now, Conscious Resistance, for a long time. Cool. And I just reached out and said the same thing. I'd love you to write for me. Let me know. And kind of, same thing with all of them. Just kind of happened,
Great. Well, that's great. And so, and that all happens at thelastAmericanVagabond.com. And then you have videos and stuff on that website too?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Whitney and I do interviews together. I do my daily wrap-up show. I post everything on Last American Vagabond.
Do people have to subscribe or what?
No.
What do you do?
No. It's free.
So you have ads or what? How do you?
Nope. Nothing. That's the point. This is what I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, everything we do is 100% user funded. 100%.
Oh, so people just send you guys donations?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
I've long said. Oh, and I mean, you could add to that, like from Truth Clothing. I mean, your fans know. You run Truth Clothing. Right. That comes. That comes in and adds to what we're doing. And all. But that I would say that's the. But I don't really plug that all the time. I don't have any ads anywhere. It's just there for people who want it. Right. It's important to me. We've both gone through this forever. In the beginning, it was like, okay, affiliate programs or whatever. You're trying to find a way to make what you're doing profitable, and then remember the beginning, it was all about like, if you're asking for money, then you're fake. It's like, what about the big pharma funded millionaires sitting in these ivory towers telling you lies all the time? It's like, this is so funny. That I think was an effort to stop people like us from doing what we were doing. Right. But ultimately, it just got ridiculous. And, Noble Gold and these garbage things out there, they're trying to push their, trying to fund, and they fund people, so I shouldn't even say that. I take that back, because their funding does absolutely help keep some of these people going. Oh, definitely. But it seems to, like you have to stop after 5 minutes and be like, look at this thing and buy this fucking flashlight. And I hate it, but I don't, people do what they do. I get it. But for me, I got to a point where I was like, I'm frustrated. I don't like this. I don't like the ads. You write an article about the Clintons, and all of a sudden underneath it, it's like, vote for Clinton. It's like, what the fuck? Get these ads, Google or whatever, AdSense blocked me way back before I even did the videos. But it got to a point to where I just was simply saying, you want to support it. My Patreon was free. Everything's free. And it just kind of got to a point to where I realized, like, people are supporting this because they believe in it. Right. That's it. Like, so they can't find it anywhere else. So they want to give me $1 a month because they believe in what I'm doing. And it just snowballed, Cool. And that is a huge, it means a lot to me, like I look at that and go, this is something the mainstream media can't even wrap their mind around. Right. They don't understand how this is possible, and I know you have a similar thing as well, like that people support you because they believe in what you're doing, and that is the new model, in my opinion. That's the honest model. Not that you can't do something else, but I'm never going to lean into advertisers or anything like that unless, who knows what will happen in the future. You know, when something will happen, like that I agree with one of these groups or whatever. I don't want to say never, but bottom line is, I've always said this: if you people out there stop believing in what I'm doing and don't want to fund it, well, the show will go away. Until that time,
Right.
I'll keep doing it. You know,
Wow.
because you believe in it.
That's great. It's great you're able to make it work. See, I never really was able to make it work, but I stopped using. I decided to stop trying Patreon because they started banning people and stuff.
Right.
And
Yeah, me too.
you know,
But you've had more attacks and more manipulation than most people that I know.
Oh, really?
You really have. Oh yeah. I mean, I don't mean just censorship. I mean like just weird, like the gang stalking and like the weird. There was you were at a time like when you were getting real high, you know, over 1,000 or whatever, or 100,000 on YouTube. You were at a time when there was, I feel like I'm something in my eye. You were at a time when there was so much happening, like where people were. There's a lot more trolling, I feel like, even
Right.
more so. Like there's still trolling now, but it's shifted in a weird direction. Like there was just some really nasty stuff happening back then,
Yeah.
and I think that you just had a lot of negativity, and it's hard. You know, people don't realize how difficult it is to be confronted with so much. You know, like we had these weird people, like these trolls, like Handsome Guy or whatever, all those things
Right.
out there. They're just like gang bombing everything in your chats and manipulating, and it's almost impossible to work with stuff like that. You know,
Yeah, it is crazy. It is crazy. Yeah, you'll have people come after you from the other side and say,
Yeah, the other
"Oh,
side.
you don't talk about Jews enough. Like you need to do it more." And then you're getting banned from PayPal because you said something about Jews sometime, and it's like it's just a crazy. It definitely is a crazy minefield. Well, it's cool. There are places like Rockfin is trying to take people in, and they pay with cryptocurrency. So.
well, and you know that we have the Super U platform is up and running now.
Oh, okay. All right. So now we'll switch to this. I've heard rumors.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep directing the conversation.
No. This is good. This is good because I've heard rumors that you're working on some kind of platform. So is that what you're about to tell me about? Because I don't know about it. Super U?
Yeah, I can show it to you. No,
Okay.
I mean, I am consulting with. They've reached one of my supporters who gives me donations periodically has just reached out and was like, "Look, I'm working on this thing, and just want this to be right. Every step of the way, I have felt nothing but a genuine direction here, and people can look at it for themselves. I mean, this whole thing has been built. There's not even a modicum of revenue coming through the site right now.
Okay.
Like there's nobody. That's only because we rushed it out and chose to push off the payment gateway because we just knew we needed this live. Like we couldn't wait another 2 months.
So
make
what
sure it was
what is
there.
it? Tell me about.
Oh, I'm sorry. So here, I'll just show you if you don't mind.
Sure.
If you want to enable the screen sharing.
Yeah.
It's called superu.net. And so he reached out and said, we want you to just help us make sure this goes the right direction,
Okay,
So
yeah.
I've been consulting the whole time, just, helping him with whatever, no financial ties to it of any kind, and just helping drive the direction. And I think they did a great job. I mean, there's little things happening here and there, which always happen when you open these things brand new, but it's invite only to start. Oh, if you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead, give it a shot. Let me see if I.
So
can
this
get
is
it to
my
show.
is it working? Share. There we
There
go.
we go.
So what you're looking at here is my channel page, essentially, right? My recent videos and so on.
Right.
Here's the home.
Right.
So you have this little carousel at the top that scrolls through the most recent live videos, which is kind of cool.
Live
and-
videos, so it does live
Well,
video too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a complete YouTube alternative, especially once we get the payment gateway working, which then people can tip. And the fun part about this is it was designed. This is my driving direction, is that we create a setup that will make the rest of it obsolete. Patreon, YouTube, all of it. PayPal, right? The whole point here is that this is about creating a system that will help drive and protect people who want to speak about things that are contentious. Like the system has been built in a way that puts the system between you and people trying to censor your content.
Right.
That's our stance.
Right.
And what was I saying? So this is it has live streaming, scheduled live streaming, live embeds, and we'll get to a point to where it'll be you can tip. What you'll see is you'll just go to my last video. Right now, all you see is follow, unfollow, like, and share. But next to this, once we get done, there's going to be a tip button, and there's going to be, I forget what the other name of it is, but a tip will be able to just be like, here's money.
Right.
Anytime, to any person, for any reason.
Right.
But there's also going to be a way you can do subscriptions. So if I want to subscribe to you for $10 a month or $1 a month, right, this makes Patreon obsolete.
Right.
And you can also do tiers on your homepage or on your channel to where you can be like, well, here's a tier for $10 if you want to watch this content or whatever, right? It just gives you the option to monetize.
Right.
And and that's will be coming. But what platform do you know is going to take a hit on the chin after paying this much to build it and then not make any revenue to get it out to people to use it, right? Just because we know we need a free speech platform. Like it's moves like this throughout this process that show me that they care more about this as a, what we're trying to do than necessarily making money. But obviously you have to make money to make it successful. So that's going to be something that comes. Also, the revenue that you make on this platform is, I think we decided to start off with at least 5% less than what YouTube is taking.
Okay.
So I think about 25 or something like that.
Right.
But the whole goal will be to bring that down as much as possible once we see we're viable. That we're sitting and we're making money. No ads, nothing like that. But that may be something we talk about in the future where we bring on like a Canada's ad or something like that and give you the option to check yes or no if you want it.
Right.
Just another possibility, but no connections to any way, shape, or form of Google or Amazon or any of that stuff. And even the App Store discussion, there is no app. All right, it's responsive, so just home screen it on your phone.
Right.
You don't need the App Store. It's like there's so much of this. But anyway, you can ask questions if you want. I don't want to take the show up on this, but it's a valid platform that I think will help people break away from YouTube for sure.
Cool. And what's the deal now? Anybody can sign up?
No, the discussion with the decision. And remember, I'm just one person in a voice of a group, that's leading this thing. The decision was to do invite only to start. To ensure, because the point was, and I agree with this, so just so you know, we're already well aware that there are aggressive, like high level attacks to try to break this thing down. Right in the beginning, right, the first Twin Went Live, there were very clear high level kind of attacks that were happening. So we already know that we're on the radar, and so the point was we want to make this is only about news right now. It's about objective, well sourced reporting, and there's people on already that I necessarily don't agree with politically. That I would actually probably go like, I don't agree with that reporting.
Right. But
I'm only one vote. You know what I mean? Like there's a whole grouping of people that vote. I'm not going to name anybody, but there's a lot of good people on here as well that have already come on. We've invited people like Corbett and High Impact Flicks and whoever else. That, but going forward, it's going to be invite only to start with those people, and then we're going to open it up if we feel that we're steady and doing well, and we'll start to invite more, and then go to some point where we just say anybody. Right. But the idea was to only bring on people that we felt were reputable to, from the group's perspective.
Right. And
that way it's much more difficult to point at this and be like, look at all those conspiracy theorists spouting fake news about COVID or whatever.
Right. I got it.
And so that's where we are. And I think it's, going to build. So once it opens up to everybody, believe me, I'm going to be trying to get everybody to go as much as possible, but
okay, cool. Well,
slow rolling right
now. Let me know. I'm interested in other platforms and stuff.
Yeah, it's a cool platform, man. I mean, I dig how it's set up with, just I don't know. I don't want to just hawk the whole thing right now, but it's cool. There's a lot of good. I've done shows about it, interviews about it. It's a good platform.
Cool. What's the website?
superu.net.
Superu.net.
The biggest part, and I won't get into it specifically because there's like major proprietary information here that they're super, like, I just don't even want to potentially get into it because they'll be upset, but that this was built in a way that has never been done before, that's meant to be impossible to take down, right? So it's like the way I describe it, because it's not what this is, but it's a good way to think about it, is like a BitTorrent kind of thing, right? Except it is technically, and this is one thing that James Corbett had a good point about, and I do get his concern here, is that it is a centralized concept, just like any of them are, because ultimately SuperU has that control, right? And you could argue if you don't know these people that there's no reason to trust them over SuperU. Like I totally get that point. Doesn't mean just because I believe in them and believe in it doesn't mean that everybody else should just do it, right? And I hope that time proves that that's what they are. But it's built in a way that has multiple locations, so it's basically the whole thing is it's seamless. Like so if YouTube or the government wants to come after this whole thing, they would have to know where all these multiple locations are, which they won't. It's protected, it's controlled, it's firewalled, and they have to do it simultaneously. And as we grow, we're going to continue to do more and more and more.
Cool.
So it'll become more impossible to take down. I was excited about that when he first brought it up. I was like, that would be pretty cool.
Great. Well, you guys should make sure to integrate cryptocurrency or something.
It's one of the things I brought up early on, because you know me, I'm like, well, this is where everything's going. Right. And at the time, it was like I was speaking Chinese, right? They were just like, okay, I don't even know what that is, and I don't know. It's really? Like it was a while. This was a year ago or two years, long time ago. And so it was like they were just like, I don't even know. Stop talking about crypto, Ryan. And so it's like I put it down, or more so blockchain, But as they've seen it develop, and especially since I've talking about Chainlink back when it was 20 cents, and now I'm here going like, look, guys, I was right. So now they're like, okay, we see the validity of it. And so that's one of the points for going after we get settled and discussing that. And who knows, maybe it won't ever happen, but I would love to see something like not just necessarily the entire platform, but an option, so you can choose to do that or pay out with that or whatever, where that's where these things are going. It's going to be kind of integrated and crossed over between all of it,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely want to have anything that you have integrate with cryptocurrency somehow, You can even
some people, I don't know. See, this is the thing, back to that same point, it's like there's valid points to why it can be beneficial, but saying everything, I don't know. I would walk the other direction a little bit, because it's like I'm still in that same mindset. Like other than this and what I do, for the show and whatever else, I'm running the other direction. I'm like, I want to get a flip phone. I'm getting old cars. Like I do not want to be involved in where this is going. So it's like to argue that like you should immerse yourself in this, it could potentially create that problem, just as a balanced perspective,
Right. Not ready yet to commit.
Well, no, I just feel like there's dangers too. There always will be, So it's like it's important to use these things every way you can to in my opinion benefit the actions I'm taking to literally fight that thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like to be completely immersed in it, I feel like then it's almost impossible then to pull yourself out of it if that should be the case or need. And I'm still in the middle of it. I trust me, I am all about the possibility that, or aware of that this could be something that's being built for the very purpose of that enslavement. That's a valid point that we can't dismiss.
Right.
And the only problem with this discussion today is that there's a lot of us right now that are saying this. They're saying like, well, obviously there's ways that can be used to benefit the push. Like I said, TLAV wouldn't be here, but it's very clear that they're trying to use this to, create that, as James Corbett calls, the digital gulag.
Right.
But on the other side of this agreement, on the other extreme side, it's you're all crazy fake news shills if you even touch on this at all. Like, I won't even hear you, la, 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 la. That right. It's like, well, come on, meet us in the middle and have this conversation, that seems like the more logical thing to do, but who knows? Maybe we're wrong. Who knows?
Right. Well, I think crypto, the whole decentralized banking thing is pretty sweet. Once you have it and you have it in your own wallet and stuff, and you can send it and receive it, it does make you feel like, oh, wow, this is different.
I love it. I love it. I've never heard that. I'm all about it. I think that's my point, though, is it's about, like we said in the beginning, investing in things you believe in, right? Things that you think aren't just going to make you a profit. Well, to each their own. But in my opinion, things that you think are actually positive, that will fight against the things we're talking about, that will create the freedom to do those things. That's what I'm all about. And I'm with you. I do think that there's definitely positives too.
Yeah, there's this thing called Theta, which does video live streaming. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think it's one that somebody just told me about.
This guy who does my website says you can run your own node, and if other people were doing the same thing, like running their node and stuff, you could all watch a live stream and it would be totally decentralized and nobody
like
could interrupt it. Is it similar?
Yeah, you should look it up. I interviewed Matt Schutte, I forget what his position was, from Holochain a while back. He was one of the leading guys, and it's exciting. If it's what it looks like, it is, in my opinion, like the thing to use to fight back against this. Right. It creates an internet where you have these holo pods, right, that you use to enter the internet, and it's the same kind of like a BitTorrent idea where it's impossible to stop. Right. If they can't shut down everyone's individual pods, and if they did, it's decentralized. Like it's just there. Like that's what we say about like the decentralized currency concept is, well, they could set off an EMP and arguably it comes back on and it's still there. Like it's not just doesn't just go away. The electricity goes away. So it's an interesting thing. It's much different than a bank. And you can see how that could be used. But yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to look that up. Theta, because anything that is decentralized, that gives you an ability to do things you do today without transacting through the establishment and the government, that's obviously a benefit.
Yeah, it's good.
Even more so, how could you argue that is benefiting that argument, right? Like that, if it's helping you do things outside of their control and outside of their knowledge, how can you argue that that's some kind of a backdoor into giving them control over you? Like, I'm sure it's possible, but that just doesn't make sense to me. You know?
Yep, that's it, exactly. So, yeah, I think there are going to be people who are going to have reasons not to get involved in cryptocurrency and stuff, but I think over the long run, I just see, you can use it for your own benefit, and you can invest in things that you believe in,
Right.
as your philosophically, which also can be very profitable. So,
Yeah,
which is great.
and that's not something you should sneeze at, right? Like I keep saying,
Yep.
these things have helped fund a lot of independent media.
Yeah, right, right, right. Well, cool, man. I have had you for like an hour. We could talk for a long time. There's other crap going on in the news and stuff, but you know, what do you think? You want to wrap it up and
What we could talk about one more thing. What do you want to talk about?
well, we have. Why don't you say what your opinion is on Israel, since we're
Oh yeah,
talking
oh
about
yeah,
whatever. We have
yeah.
stuff going on in Israel, right? And
What's that?
they started it by bombing the mosque. It's
Well,
or
okay,
sort
well,
of,
yes.
right?
To make sure it's very clear, this started more so with settlers and aggression, and they basically Robert's been covering this. Just check out the last American Vagabond. He's been covering this since this kind of iteration of it really started. And there's a group called the Vahav, which is this racial. It's a Jewish supremacy racist group, and that's what the Israeli
Right.
media calls them, right? That's what they
Okay.
are.
Right.
And they were running around. They're settlers, which illegal occupiers is what the
Right.
UN. It's what they are.
Right.
Running around and beating Palestinians up, dragging women out of their car, like doing all horrible stuff. Well, specifically, this started with this one town where they were.
Right.
It was so over the top, and people started fighting back. And so Israel started taking action, especially in the mosque, right? And that's where that leads to this, where people were in the mosque, and these aren't like. Here's what's crazy: is they frame this as just like Hamas, right, or whatever. These are civilians in a very densely populated civilian area, half of them children, millions of
Right.
people.
Right.
And so there's on video Israel IDF just opening fire inside of a mosque. It's Al Aqsa. For
Right.
you, those that
Right.
know, it's a very, very important discussion point for a lot of
Right.
different things, and it's on record. It's an egregious war crime in a place of worship. Nobody cared, right?
Right.
And then it happened again and again. They were beaten in the mosque, and they kept doing all these different things, right? And then of course there was the fire and on and on and on. So the point is, a lot of this stuff happened, and Israel began to openly kill and attack civilians in Gaza and elsewhere, right? And at this point, Hamas openly stated this. They said, if you keep killing civilians, we're going to respond.
Right.
Right. And it was plain. And this went on for days until finally, I think they bombed that building. It was a civilian building with all sorts of stuff. And so Hamas bombed back.
Right.
And they shot rockets and missiles. Like it was real stuff this time, which
Right.
shows you that not only have they been restrained this whole time, right? They've had these, they haven't used them. So it shows you that even when Israel's been attacking them, they've shown restraint. They've shot and they bombed and it hit Jerusalem, right? People have died. Or realize that hundreds of people have died. Children, women
Right.
in Gaza. And we have there's people that did die over in Israel, but it was dramatically less. And then it goes on where Israel is just like carpet bombing Gaza. Just
Right.
bombing, and I say that kind of not literally carpet bombing, but just bombing everywhere, and killing a lot of people. Right? Robert's family lives in Gaza right now, and they're watching their neighbors blow up.
Really?
I mean, it's horrific, and this is all civilians. Now, also the important thing to remember here is this is legally speaking an occupied territory. The UN has never faltered on that.
Right.
So there's no way you can pretend one or the other. It's illegal, and they're doing it anyway. So when a place is occupied by definition, according to the UN and the Geneva Convention, they have a right to armed rebellion. Nobody talks about this. So if it is an illegal occupation, which the UN has always maintained, so I don't know, that's the international law, that gives them the right to fight back. Doesn't matter who shot first. They are occupied. They have a right to armed rebellion. So that means that what they're doing is legal. Why is this not discussed in the media? And this is the U.S. government supports the UN. So what are we quibbling about here, right? It becomes political. It becomes narrative. But Israel says this, they say that. Well, the narrative doesn't matter. It's an illegal occupation, right? You see, it always comes back to that point. And especially then you find out that they're shooting children and bombing civilians. And also the point that we're talking about them fighting against what they claim is Hamas.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Well, that's one group in a massively million plus, or it's 100, I forget what the exact number is. I don't want to misquote it. Millions of people in Gaza, half of them children. And they're bombing just indiscriminately. I can show you the videos. I showed it on my show. Children jumping on trampolines when they can see bombs landing right there. I mean, and this is horrific stuff. Like I get so worked up about this because it not only shows you that these people are, this government specifically is what we're always talking about, the Israeli government are what we say they are, as well as the fact that our governments don't care. They know
Right.
this is happening. They don't
Right.
care. You know,
Right.
and they cover it up. And all
Yep.
they do is, and I just went through this today, you can see almost every single politician in the US government putting a tweet out that says, what they're doing is in Israel is terrorism and this is cannot be stand. And then ADL captions it and says, thanks for your support.
Right.
But over and over and over and over and over. I mean, what does that show you? You know what I mean? Like, it's just sickening to me that this is completely normalized. Like, I don't know. I can go on forever. I mean, you have questions about it or anything? I mean, it's just rough because Robert's going to keep covering it, and it's just. I mean, he documented this before it started and told you this was going to happen,
Right.
with all the facts, with all the videos. You can look it up for yourself.
We got to cover. Well, we'll make sure to follow it on your. That's all on your website, right? On last.
Oh yeah,
Vagabond
I recommend we all check. We just know what's happening. I mean, it doesn't mean that you couldn't argue that there are things that happen. Like, I mean, see, even I say that, like, if it comes back to the fact of occupation and armed rebellion, there's no situation where you don't have the right to armed rebellion because you shot first.
Right.
That's not how this works in the concept of what's happening according to the UN. But even if that was the case, we have to remember that this was started in this case by Israeli settlers and by the Israeli government, and even the Israeli media called out Netanyahu for using this for his own political gain. Right. They say it's an open joke over there where they say, "Oh, here he goes again, starting a war with Gaza to win himself." That's why he's been in this position for 5 terms. That's why he actually holds 3 positions in the government. It's not a democracy. It's a facade. It's a joke. You can't be the minister of war and the minister and the prime minister and the whatever his 3 positions are. It's ridiculous. And if they see it, we need to be able to see it too, right? They even just showed him that they were like, remember, this guy has like 3 indictments too, right? And they were about to kick him out. And there's an article over in Israeli media that says, oh, they were about to oust him, but the Jerusalem crisis puts it on hold. Right. Shocking.
Right.
It's crazy.
Good. I knew you'd have all the news on it. Yeah, it's awful what's happening over there, and it just shows you it doesn't matter who the president is they're always going to be pro-Israel. They're always
good old Joe is a vocal Zionist, right? I say Trump was probably more so than him. He just didn't say it out loud.
Yeah,
right. But Biden is all about it.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, good. We got some controversial material on the show. Good having you on the show. Everybody, you can buy a t-shirt to support Ryan and get it from our store at truthclothing.io. The Question Everything shirts. We have a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
And it supports your channel.
I actually forgot to get back to Kay, but she has some new designs that I thought were pretty cool too.
Okay, cool.
Some new stuff coming.
We might do a new t-shirt for you too. So check that out at truthclothing.io. It supports us and it supports Ryan at the same time. So cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on the show. It's great having you on and being on YouTube and everything.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. And the great thing about your this is what I always say about Truth Clothing is it's not some big company, right? I mean, you guys need to know he does this out of his house in his garage. I mean, this is real, right? And this is because he cares about what we're doing and cares about what he's doing. Like, this is what you should support. You know?
Yes, that's correct. And we even take cryptocurrency too, if you know how to do it. So thanks, man. Well, thanks for coming on the show. It's really good catching up with you.
You too, brother.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody on YouTube. We are tuning out. I might be on DLive a little bit after. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. LastAmericanVagabond.com. All right, man. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you guys later.
Peace.